General concept of today's video is thinking an art? But I just kind of want to walk through what I think is a healthy thought process. Also talk a little bit about meditation. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, I don't even know what specifically I want to talk about, but there's kind of a lot. And she better not pull up right next to me. Oh, of course she did. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about whether thinking is an art or not, and kind of expand on that. I'm not trying to preach to you. I'm not trying to explain anything that I know definitively. I just thought that this would be interesting to explore. This is an exploratory, is that the word? Exploratory video. None of my videos do I know the answers. Like, I feel like sometimes I come off a little bit preachy, like I know the answers to life or something. I don't. I'm aware that I don't. But I just want to... I think about these things and I like to write about them, so I just want to share some of my thoughts and observations. In order to address the question, is thinking an art, it's important to differentiate types of thinkers. And in my head, there are two different types of thinkers primarily. And this is like intelligent thought. Like if you're trying to... intelligent thought, whatever that may mean to you. Okay, when you're like intentionally thinking about things, right? There are two different types of people, primarily, in my opinion. There's an observer and there's a creator. And they definitely, it's not that binary, right? I'm making like huge generalizations here, but that's like kind of what I've noticed. And it's not like, it's not better or worse necessarily to be one or the other. But I think it's so common nowadays to say, to just assume that in order to be intelligent, you have to like produce something, like either scientifically or creatively, or else you're not doing anything with your life. But I was thinking about the concept and the benefit of just being an observer and how healthy it actually is to kind of just sit back and observe the things around you. Like, I don't necessarily think you need to be compiling your observations into something new and taking your own spin on it. I think it's also very smart to just accept your current reality and be complacent in it. Like, there are people in this world who are complacent being a bartender or something, and they just accept that that's their world, and they're not necessarily trying to produce anything. They just enjoy the connections that they have with the people around them, and it's not like they're actively trying to climb some ladder or produce a new piece of work or academic study. Like, it's not, there's no ladder really. So I don't think being an observer is inherently bad. Another thing that influenced me to talk about this is I read this short story for one of my classes, Bartleby by Herman Melville. And in the story, basically there's this man who gets hired as a scrivener, which is basically like a scribe or like a copy person, someone who copies like legal documents at this law firm. And every time he's asked to do something by his boss, he just goes, "I would prefer not to." And it's like very infuriating, and basically he just keeps saying it until everyone just kind of gives up on him. But the boss just like keeps feeding into it almost, and like doesn't fire him for the longest time because he's like drawn to it. He's like, wow, you have so much agency to just say, "I would prefer not to." Anyway, that's just how I interpreted it. But Bartleby eventually just dies as a vagrant in a prison because he just kept taking this very passive role in his own life and refusing to do anything, basically. Like, while yes, obviously this could be interpreted as like a warning tale for the passive role many people take in their own lives and the frustration that comes with the desire to connect to others when they may not necessarily be willing to, I also think that Bartleby was intelligent and capable, but he just simply refused to. He was like an observer. I think that he was just an observer. And that's okay. But as someone who has a hard time just observing, I have to like create something or produce something if I observe something. Like, that's why I think that I am more of a creative person. I get carried away with fantasy and things that haven't even already happened yet. And I live as if they already have, which is good because it's like, it can draw certain things into my life because I like pretend, I fake it until I make it, basically is the motto of my entire life, apparently. But it also creates a lot of anxiety for me because I'm worried about things that haven't even happened, and I get caught up in my own fantasy and I go down this rabbit hole of what ifs. I definitely do use daydreaming as an escape, and I do live vicariously through looking at social media. Like, I think it's so easy to live vicariously through other people nowadays that people are just unwilling to put in the work to even create their own life. And even as someone who is a creative, I can get caught up in that because I can just create it in my own head. I don't even need to do anything because I'm like reliving certain things. Like, ever since I was little, I would just read books, watch movies. I was always just stuck in my own head. I have an imagination. That's just like who I am. And I think it manifested in kind of negative ways, because eventually I just started living in these different worlds and not really trying to build anything in this actual reality. So there are definitely dangers to being an imaginative person in that way. There are also dangers of being a fan of other people. When you live vicariously through someone else, you're often looking up to someone like it's a celebrity or something, and you're a fan. You grow up so obsessed with their life that you're not even living your own. I think I don't know why this stands out so much to me as an example, but K-pop and like that fandom, I think a lot of people who like K-pop, don't hate me if you like K-pop, okay? But like, I think a lot of people who like K-pop, other than the primary thing of like, oh, they have like a crush on someone because they're attractive, it's like they look up to certain idols and certain lifestyles and they wish that they could live like that, but they can't, or something like that. I've heard a lot of people talk about that, like, oh my god, she's so pretty, she sings, she dances, she's so cute in interviews, I don't know, things like that. And then they get like obsessed with every single detail of their life, or like every single interview or show, and they're just like living as if they are that person, or like living through the lens of that person. And this is, I think, the danger of being an observer, because you're not in a similar way, you are living vicariously. Like I said, as a creative, I watch movies a lot, and I'm like creating my own reality in my head, drawing on those movies, right? As an observer, I guess, you're not even necessarily creating, you're just like, it's very direct. It's like you wish you were that person, or you're just like pretending as if. It's there's like a distinction there. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you're doing similar things, but they kind of manifest as escapism in different ways. Like, you're either creating a reality in your head, or you're living someone else's by witnessing it constantly. But okay, that's not to say that observation is bad, okay? Observation, I think the most intelligent people are good at observing, and the stupidest people are good at observing. Or maybe not good at it, but just end up doing it. And I think it comes with both. It's like, it's a symptom of both passivity, is that the word? Passivity and complacence in your own life, and you don't really have a desire to grow, so you just like observe the people around you. But also, that is a trait that many successful people and mentally healthy people have, because you do have to accept certain things about your reality. You do have to live in the moment. Even as a creative, you do have to accept certain parts of your art, because you can't have it be perfect, and a lot of the times the things that you accept are what make the art so valuable. The fact that you accept certain elements of it and then like keep working others, like, it's a symptom. Observation in that way is a symptom of acceptance and good temperament, because you know what to prioritize, you know. And also, there are plenty of intelligent people who have settled. I say that in air quotes because I don't think there is a such thing as settling, really, but who have settled for a simple life, so to speak. They don't try to think about their potential, because there is no really such thing as potential. And I think the most successful people I know realize that they're just living life to experience things. And if they like a certain experience and they're happy in a certain experience and they want to stay in that certain experience, and grow their relationship in a certain bubble. They want to grow their relationships and explore certain specific things in a certain bubble. Like, say if you're a bartender and you're happy talking to the same people every day, and you're happy just pouring drinks every day, and you like your routine, and you like to go home and like read and meditate and watch TV, and then in the morning you like to do your cleaning, and then in the evening you like to go out and talk to people, and that's your daily schedule, and you're happy, then there is no reason for you to change that. You know what I mean? And that is a trait. The acceptance in that routine is a trait of very healthy people, and the acceptance of each moment and each thought that comes with that kind of routine are traits of very healthy people. So I think the most emotionally well-regulated people know when to observe and be complacent in their own thoughts and actions and in others, I guess. Like, they're not constantly looking for the next best thing. The people who maximize, I guess, the effects of both being an observer and a creator, those people know when it's necessary to observe and accept, and then they know when they want to create and when it's necessary to create. But they're not constantly creating. They're not constantly like creating these scenarios in their head and like feeding their own imagination. They kind of know when to just accept the thoughts that come versus when to build on them, if that makes sense. And I was thinking about this, and I was also thinking about like the idea of a tortured creative, because that's like a stereotype that has been around for a very long time. And I was thinking, like, the most creative people tend to solely just gravitate towards being a creative and not really an observer. But that's also why a lot of them are so tortured, because they just can't stand to just observe. Their mind is constantly going, and it's constantly fueling things, and it's constantly making fantasy scenarios, like whether it's for better or for worse. They're just constantly going. And I say this as someone who is like this. Like, if someone says something that is slightly off, like if a friend says something that is slightly off, they're the types of people who will convince themselves that their friend secretly hates them or something. They'll like overthink to no end because they're creating a reality in their head. They can't just observe and be like, yeah, that is what it is. Like, their tone was a little off in that sentence. Okay, let's move on. Like, I think these are all thoughts that I've had that come along with studying meditation and just, I guess, studying how to control my thoughts, because I am someone whose mind is constantly running and I need to manage it somehow. So I've been looking into it, you know, and in looking into it, in seeing how other people's brains work, I guess I have thoughts about how other people's brains work, so now I'm sharing it with you. So back to like my central question of, is thinking an art? There's a lot of mental gymnastics and self-manipulation that kind of has to happen to learn to observe your own thoughts. In a weird, twisted way, I think observing your own thoughts, or learning how to observe your own thoughts, is an art, because you need to configure and contort your thinking into a specific way that makes you accept certain components of your thinking. And that's kind of how it is in art. You can't just keep adding paint to your canvas in hopes that it'll make something valuable. You know what I mean? Part of art is knowing when to stop. And it's kind of like that idea in music that it's like, it's not even the study of noise, it's like the study of when to be silent or something like that. There's like some quote like that I think of when I think about this, that I think applies here. But it's true, is it not? It's like, in order to be a truly artistic thinker, you need to know when to observe. You need to know how to manipulate your own thoughts into being able to observe and not constantly create. Just like how a musician needs to know when to be quiet in certain places. And just like how a painter needs to know when to stop putting paint on the freaking canvas and just accept it for what it is. So contorting your thoughts and meditating and learning how to control them is pretty artistic. It's a pretty artistic practice in and of itself, is my point, I guess. So in that way, thinking is absolutely an art. And learning to accept certain things is involved and central to learning to manipulate what you create in your mind and then what you bring to reality. I think it's impossible to create if you don't accept certain things. I think the Bob Ross mentality is so underrated in the sense that the art does lie in happy little accidents. I think a lot of the most valuable artistic choices that have been made in like famous works have been because of learning to accept certain elements and just leave them as is, or just make do with what resources are available. So kind of confining yourself in a way does make you think more artistically. Confining your thinking to accept your current reality and just to utilize what you have around you and available in your current reality and in your present makes good art. That really does. Like, you can't just live in the future in order to make good art. I've been really trying to do this. Okay, now I'm going to like deviate from my notes a little bit. For the longest time, I was always the person who was like putting things off in the distant future and saying like, I will do this when I have this. Like this YouTube channel, I guess I put it off because I was like, well, I don't have good thoughts right now. My skin's not clear right now. Like, I don't feel healthy right now. There is like always something. And I think as soon as you start to accept your present, you will start actually being able to create things that are meaningful and relatable to other people, because you need to accept things to create relatable content. Like, that's just true. Now, if you're thinking in terms of pushing scientific progress, that's a different thing, because you do kind of need to think a little bit out of the bounds for that. But even in that, like, even when you're doing that, you do have to accept certain realities, certain fundamental truths to further scientific knowledge. And even that, you could argue, right? Like, you could argue that the current laws and principles that exist in science are not 100% reliable, but you just have to accept it. There's a fundamental level of trust you have to have in order to do anything productive. So, and I think it all starts with acceptance. So thinking is an art that needs acceptance, like everything else. You do have to learn to exercise your mind in a different way. I say you as if, see, this is what I mean by I sound preachy. Like, I'm saying this as if I'm telling you that I know this as absolute truth, but I don't know anything. I'm mostly just talking to myself when I say you. So I'm gonna throw that disclaimer out again, because I feel like people are gonna be like, okay, what does she know? She knows nothing. That's true, I do know nothing. I've been happy just being quiet and observing the things around me. The weather is getting nicer and the birds have started to come out, so I started watching the birds and listening to them. So you'll probably see more bird related content, because I've been photographing them and videographing them more too. Thank you for watching my video. Silly, kind of weird video, I know. Not like, as always, I feel like not really complete thoughts, but also kind of redundant to my previous ones, but it's what's been on my mind, so there you have it. See you in the next one.